Alright everyone, welcome back for another episode of the ICA Show. I am Alan, your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Luke Mulvey. Luke, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, Alan. How are you?
I'm excellent. So Luke, I have some news for you.
Okay.
So, last week, at the all-girls tournament, Lisa Sun, a student of Grandmaster Alex Stripunsky, got third place in the open section, getting 4.5 points out of 6. She played some really tough games, and we're going to get both her and her coach, Grandmaster Alex Stripunsky, on the stage.
Sounds great.
Alex, Lisa, how are you doing today?
Hi guys. Hi everyone. Hi Lisa.
All right.
Hi.
All right. Before we start, Alex, I have a few questions for you. So my first one is, obviously, you have lots of accomplishments as a chess player, achieving the rank of Grandmaster. How long have you been a coach now?
How long? Well, if you count myself as my student, then I'm coaching myself like for 45 years or something like, but jokes aside, maybe like 30 years.
30 years, well.
Yes,
And
I started to teach back in Ukraine when I still was living there, and obviously continued after moving to US.
and during your time as a coach, what was your biggest accomplishment?
Again, myself, you know, I'm Grandmaster, but I have 3 or 4 international masters, so they're all pretty good. Currently, my best student is Robert Shlechtenko, who has a potential to become not only Grandmaster, but an elite Grandmaster. So, very promising player.
Yeah, that is great. So now let's get more specific. Let's talk about Lisa. So I know you've been coaching many students over the time and many students simultaneously, but since Lisa joined your program, how much growth have you seen in her?
Well, to be correct, I have never studied with Lisa privately, but she's constantly attending ICA chess camps and my classes, so it's difficult for me to track exactly her progress, but from what I see, she is improving.
That's great. Lisa.
Lisa is a very, very tough player.
Yeah. Lisa, on to you now. So since taking classes with Alex, in what aspect has your game improved the most?
I would say strategically, because I've always been pretty good at tactics, I would say. So I think my positional play has gotten a lot better. I study privately with Sunil Weirmantry, so I just take classes with Alex on Wednesdays, so in a group.
And obviously
in summer camps, right, Lisa?
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously you just had a great tournament at the All Girls Championship in New York. What's your next goal in the game?
I would say my next big goal would probably be Girls Nationals, which is in April in Chicago. So
Perfect.
I will be in the under 14 section. So yeah.
All right, perfect. I wish you good luck. Let's get right into it.
Guys, I would like to look at very important game Lisa played in state championship. It was round 5. So basically it was a decisive game for Lisa, right? Because Lisa, you took a bye in round 6, right?
Yeah, because I had
so basically it was very important and decisive round. Were you nervous?
Sort of, because usually the last round's the most important, but since I took a bye, that was kind of the last round for me. So
exactly, considering that you took a bye, you were pretty much in must-win situation against this girl. How to play in general decisive games? You have to play as solid as possible, develop all pieces, make castle, connect your rooks, and don't do anything crazy in the opening, right? Let's take a look at the actual game. So Lisa was black. So queen Indian. White plays queen b3. First critical moment of the game. What moments we treat as critical, Lisa? Yeah.
Change of pawn structure, trading pieces, and switch from static to dynamic play.
Right. Transitional moments between dynamic and statical play, modification of pawn structure, and piece exchange. So at this point, you need to make a decision, take or not to take on c3. After you take on c3, white gets
Check.
two bishops pretty much for nothing, from my point of view. You know, after queen takes c3, white has an edge. Two bishops is a kind of advantage. So you actually have to force white to work hard to get two bishops. Correct move, from my point of view, is c5. For example, if white plays a3, right, then after bishop c3,
Check.
queen takes c3 castle, g3, c takes d, queen takes d4, white still gets two bishops, but you have an extra pawn in the center and nice piece play. Like can develop a knight with a tempo, play bishop b7. Kasparov won a nice game many years ago, like 20 years ago, beating Michael Gurevich in this line. So after immediate bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, knight f4, queen c2, bishop b7, the easiest way for white to get an advantage is g3, followed by bishop g2, castle. And in this case, it's very difficult to prevent expansion in the center. White can do by moving knight away and playing f3 and f4. Basically, there is no blockade. Plus, after something like g3 and bishop g2, knight g5 is always becoming a threat using the spin. So instead, after queen c2, bishop b7, white played bishop f4, castle, e3, Lisa plays d6, bishop d3, f5. I would say this position is approximately equal. Not so easy for white to exploit two bishops right now because not so easy to open the center. So at this point, there's another critical moment. White plays rook g1 with a clear intention of playing g4. So what you were thinking at this point, Lisa? Like the idea behind rook g1 is absolutely clear, right? g4 and an attack.
Yeah. Just like trying to like finish developing. I mean, I didn't think that like. I guess I thought that like I should bring my knight over to the king side if that could like help. So I played like knight bd7. I thought like maybe like the knight on f3 would become like a bit like it would be unprotected after that, and maybe like there would be some discovered attacks. But yeah.
Well, fundamental rules say that against side attack we have to hit the center, right? So white is preparing an attack on the king side. We have to hit the center. Actually, you had fantastic opportunity here to do it after knight a6. The threat is knight b4. So it's a tempo white needs to react by playing a3. And here you had fantastic move e5, sacking a pawn. White needs to take, d takes c. And then after knight c5, pay attention, white cannot go this way, right? White is with rook g1 move, white committed to make long castle. So by playing knight c5, we are applying pressure against the center, so d takes c may be the threat. If white takes, e takes d, c takes d, and makes castle, we play queen f6. Black has fantastic positional compensation. So this threat is rook c8, f2 is vulnerable, d3 is vulnerable. So that would be a very sharp position, pretty much in your style. I think after knight d7, white strategy is paying off. So white is playing g4. Lisa played knight f6. And then white responded by playing knight g5.
Oh, I think I've used the other knight to go to f6.
Sorry. Yes, absolutely right. Knight f6, white is playing knight g5 here. What do you think? What should white do instead of knight g5? So, very important moment, right? By playing knight f6, you create a threat of bishop takes f3. White can defend, or white can ignore the threat.
Mhm. Maybe.
So I think after g takes f, if you take bishop takes f3 and white takes f takes e, right, you might find yourself in a big trouble. For example, like knight b8, bishop h6, right, and g7 is hanging. After g6, then bishop takes g6. So that was definitely a missing opportunity. And in general, conclusion is when your opponent is creating a threat, first question you ask yourself is not how to defend, but rather can I ignore this threat or can I create a stronger threat? So that was definitely a missing opportunity for it. So she played knight g5 instead, queen e7, and then after g takes f, Lisa played e5. That's a very good practical decision, right? We keep bishop out of play, we keep the center locked, and I think Lisa again is in very good shape here. So then after d, bishop g3, what did you do here, Lisa? You played e4. And then after bishop e2, knight is going to e8. I think after that, game was balanced for a very long time until the end game. So, and going fast forward, you got this position. I will set it up. Let's skip the middle game. So with her last move, Lisa just played d5. White played queen d2, and Lisa played queen e5 here. So that's when everything went wrong for White. White played queen d4. What did you think at this point? Did you immediately notice that it's a decisive mistake?
Oh, well, I was like under time pressure for a while, so I was just thinking like if white ever played queen d4, I like already had it like calculated sort of. So like when she played queen d4, I was like going to take.
So we have to say that after queen takes d4, it takes d, Lisa found fantastic shot e3, basically ending the game. After bishop takes c6, no one can stop this pawn. White played bishop f1, but then after bishop f3, c5 e2, bishop takes e2, bishop takes e2, black bishop easily stops these two pawns, so consequently position is completely winning for black. So what conclusions can we make out of this game? And in general, how a chess player is developing? You analyze your games, right? You identify mistakes and basically make memory cards targeting typical mistakes you make. For example, in this position, in this game, we spoke about two bishops. I want to show you one instructive example from my game. In the situation when I got two bishops. Played this game a few years ago. My opponent just played f4, and I got a chance to get two bishops. Right? By taking on d3, I got two bishops. So what is the procedure? You have two bishops. What should you do? How to realize two bishops advantage? What is the method? How would you continue here, Lisa?
Probably like open up the position.
Open up a position is a common answer, but what if position is already open? The idea is to attack the squares of the bishop your opponent does not have. Right? You just took light square bishop. You do have light square bishop. Your opponent does not. So attack light squares. That was the first thing which came to my mind. How can I do it? I played queen c6, applying pressure on this diagonal. So white cannot play e5, obviously, because of queen takes g2. So the only move for white is knight g3. How can black increase pressure?
H5.
H5, correct.
Yeah.
H5, absolutely right. With the threat of h4. So again, what should we do to protect the pawn? The only move is rook e1. And how is black winning now?
Knight g4.
And now knight g4, right?
Check.
Right, knight g4, the king cannot go to h1 because of knight f2, so after hg, the king has nowhere to go, and after knight h5, the most accurate way is bishop f2. Basically winning the knight and the rook. Once again, that's all about mindset, right? You get two bishops, attack the squares of the bishop your opponent does not have. Another instructive example I want to show you, very related to the opportunity your opponent missed in this game after you played knight ef6. Give me 1 second. Right. Right, guys. White to move. With his last move, black played bishop f5, attacking the bishop. So obviously white played c5 previously, black played bishop f5, attacking white's light square bishop. What should we do? Should white take here, or should white take there? Or white should ignore both threats and maybe create a stronger threat? The answer is interesting. The best move for white in this position is bishop a6. You got to consider unusual moves, right? You have to consider all kind of possibilities. So what's the point? If white takes on a6, if black takes on a6, sorry, then after c takes d, black gets a losing structure, and white gets a lot of outposts for his knight, so the game is strategically lost. On the other hand, the knight cannot retreat because black is losing all the pawns. Again, what this game tells us, when you or your opponent create a threat, right? You have to very often use the process of elimination and look at all possible moves, quickly eliminating the bad options. So those two things, I think, they're the most instructive in this game. Obviously, very hard game and well fought. A nice shot in the end, very nice end game, and overall fantastic result, Lisa. So congratulations, and looking forward to see more successes.
Thanks.
Right. Do we have any questions, guys?
All right. Looks like the comments are a little bit quiet today. So, Alex, thank you so much for joining our show. It was a pleasure to have you, and we hope you can come back in the future. Lisa, you too. Even though you're not a grandmaster yet, it was still a pleasure to have you on the show, and we hope we can have you back sometime in the future also. Both of you, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
All right, Luke, that really was something else, yeah? Even though...
Yes,
Yeah.
some really instructive games towards the end. Those were, really nice positional ideas.
Yeah, even though neither of us were mainly in a talking role as hosts, it was still really good for both of us to sit back and to be able to watch this. The thing that I took most was when Alex said, when they create a threat anew, instead of thinking defense, how can you create a stronger threat? And I remember that was the point on the first show, my game against Teddy, which we analyzed, the very first game we analyzed, he was killing me down the king side. And instead of doing something the queen side or the center, I just focused on the threat, and eventually I had no counter. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, after this show finishes, you can go back and watch the very first episode.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in your game, I think it was also, okay, and this is a throwback. This is maybe going to sound like nonsense for people who don't know what we're talking about, but in that game you're talking about, I think it was instructive that, you sort of got tunnel vision on one side of the board, and then the finishing sort of flurry came when he opened up the queen side, right? And he blew you out of the water because all your pieces were congregated on one side of the board, serving a defensive role that the other side was left wide open. But yeah, that was a while ago. So
yeah, definitely. So we have another game to go over today, but before that, let's take you guys to the commercial break. And conveniently enough, our commercial break is about Grandmaster Alex Stripunsky's masterclasses. If you go onto our website, icanj.net, you will see we have classes for the winter semester already open, including masterclasses with Grandmaster Alex Stripunsky and Women's Grandmaster Irina Levitina. Registration's open. Early bird expires very soon. I think it's going to be in only 2 days it expires, and it's going to be full price. It's going to be 10 classes, around 1.5 hours each class. Top level instruction from both Grandmasters. Irina teaches Mondays, Future Master, 1200 rated above, and Master 1600 above. Alex teaches Wednesday, Future Master, and then he teaches Saturday, Masterclass, 11:15. Irina's classes are both virtual. Alex's are both hybrid, virtual or at our Glen Rock location, where, in addition, we had our ICA Open Championship. At that tournament, Unfortunately, results aren't posted yet, as our TDs were at the state tournament instead of making the prize posts. But what I can tell you is that we had a clear winner. Our winner this time was Lev Koganov, who got 3 out of 3. And even though he's not on the show, we're really happy to say that he did submit a game. So that's what we'll be going over right now. So let me just get the game up. Here we go. Let's get right into it. So in this game, Lev Koganov was playing as black, so we'll be analyzing for black, but we'll also be analyzing for a little bit for white also. And what I really liked about Lev, it's something that I did in my first, when we were going over my games, he put timestamps. I didn't put a timestamp for every move onto Lichess, but I was able to do when there was a huge shift in time, like 7 minutes lost in a move, 5 minutes lost in a move. I included that. That's going to be another angle we can approach the game from. So, Luke, are you ready to go?
Absolutely.
Let's do this. So the game started e4, e6, d4, d5, e5, c5, classic French setup, c3,
Yeah.
knight c6.
Yes. So already, I think it's worth pointing out that, the advanced variation, it might seem, supernatural, and it's definitely, a theoretically sound way to play against the French. But I remember when I was, sort of first starting out, and I didn't really understand the dynamics with the pawn chains going on. It feels like as white, oh, you get to play e5, you stop your opponent's knight from coming to f6. It feels like it's like, oh, you just get everything you want, and white just must be instantly better. But as it turns out, this advanced variation right away is, not really the most cutthroat of variations that that black has. So the French is a very sneaky opening in that way, that it optically might seem like white is doing great, but black has all these ways to generate a lot of counterplay against white's pawn chain from c3 to e5. So it's something to be aware of.
Yeah, definitely something to be aware of. Something that I've seen many times while playing against the French. I never played the French as black because I don't like seeing less control of the center, which is kind of ironic because I am a Caro player. But regardless, I always enjoy playing against the French on a white. The biggest ever win came at the ICA Team East tournament against the French, but also I had a few losses against, especially against Harlan when he set up against the French. So yeah, we move.
Yep.
Queen b6, attacking the b pawn. a3, c4, having now. Yeah.
And so now we lock it up, and so now the French is all about the pawn structure, right? It's about this
Exactly.
This pawn chain. Is white or is black gonna open everything up, or are they gonna close it down as they've done here? And it's also, I think, just worth pointing out that notice black is only going c4 after white has played a3, because this move a3 is ceding some of the control of the light squares. So imagine just like a move ago, right? Before, let's say they play a move like bishop e2. If you go c4 here, white is just going to blast open this pawn chain at a moment where black is unable to hold everything together. So here, I think, actually, black is just falling apart. You're probably going to have to take here, and in that case, they're going to have an open a file, half open a file, bishop coming to this diagonal in some cases to trade off their bad bishop for black's good bishop, and it would just be a disaster. So it's only when they go a3 that we're going c4, not so much to take space or so much in that sense, but really just to clamp down on this chain here, sort of fixing the pawn on b2. So yeah.
Before we move on, Luke, I have a quick question.
Okay.
I have a quick question for you. So obviously, black is putting all their pawns in the dark squares, playing on those squares. So at what point, if any, would you consider the move f6?
That's definitely a move. Yeah. Now that we don't have the tension between the pawns on c5 and d4, really the only central break that that black has is f6, which is sort of a more, cagey way of playing than the typical pressure on d4. But yeah, this f6 move is going to be definitely that's like the break here. That's the move Black has to look out for to see if it's on the table.
Yeah. So we move
Mm-hmm. So knight b
knight
d2.
bd2, which it's hard for me to understand because this knight really doesn't have much of a future, and playing it now seems like it blocks up the bishop, Luke.
Yeah. So just noting again, before we were mentioning, the good and bad bishops. Notice how, white has all their pawns on dark squares, black has all their pawns on light squares. The color of your central pawns is going to determine how good your bishops are. So if your pawns are all on light squares, probably the light squared bishop is going to be a little bit passive, right? Because it's going to be blocked by those pawns. So this is the classic bad bishop in the French, this light squared bishop that gets stuck behind the e6 pawn on c8. And this is going to be your bad bishop as white. So there's some logic that maybe you want to get the bishop out of the way of the knight first, but of course here that's impossible because b2 is always under attack. So the way that black is set up here is sort of forcing white to keep this bishop at home.
All right.
Knight
So
b2 is eventually black is going to want to break out with b3 to sort of liberate the sort of free up or release the pressure is what I'm trying to say. Release the pressure of this pawn from the queen. But like the next move might be a little bit too early. So knight bd2 I think is a reasonable developing move. It seems okay.
yeah.
So knight a5, and again, this b3 square, right? This is really the critical square in the position. These light squares on the queen side.
For sure. Bishop b2.
Yes, bishop b2. Bishop d7.
Bishop d7.
Mm-hmm.
And here we go. Here's our break.
Now
f6.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems as if at this point, white already created a bunch of weaknesses for himself. The b3, the fact that his center is soon going to collapse. So it seems as if maybe a3 was the big mistake. What do you think?
Oh, I don't think a3 is not a mistake. A3 is I'm not a French expert, but really from either side. But as far as I'm aware, a3 is still like a theoretical move.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to oversell Black's case here. I mean, white definitely has more than enough play in this position if they can understand the dynamics with this sort of locked up pawn chain. I think what white does in the game with rook e1 is kind of smart. You're never like terrified of this capture, even though it's trading a side pawn for a center pawn, because you'll probably take with the pawn, you open up a nice square for your knight, and maybe you'll sort of consolidate, coordinate your pieces like this, bringing the other knight to f3. And now that this bishop is already off of c8, you're gonna be much more free to move this bishop, because in the event of a hypothetical queen takes b2, there's always going to be rook b1 with a lot of pressure down the b file. So this capture I don't think is ever a worry for white. So I think rook e1 is a smart move, just lining up more, overprotecting the e5 square. So long castles by black. So already we have a very interesting position. Opposite side castling. A lot of times, you see the opposite situation where one side will have their pawns advanced, say on the king side trying to attack this way. It's not every day that you see, one side push all their pawns on the queen side and then castle that way, right? So it just goes to show the real grip that black has on the queen side, that even though they have pushed pawns in front of their king, they're not super worried about white ripping everything open too quickly. So yeah, it's okay. Now they take, which this I'm not a fan of. I don't know about you, Alan, but now
I'm with you, Luke.
Yeah, because now once you release the tension on the king side, now this knight is looking a little bit foolish, right? It's limited by this pawn, and I mean, I don't really see a great way to maneuver it. I mean, sometimes there's an idea of like knight h4 and like something like this, but it's going to be a little bit awkward to coordinate when you're getting attacked on that side of the board as well. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this idea just from a practical standpoint, because as we know with opposite side castling positions, you know, the main plan is to open up the side of the board where your opponent's king is castled. So yeah, it just seems a little bit awkward. But okay, bishop f1.
It's definitely awkward. And before we go on,
Yeah.
I actually want to point out, I alluded to
the time
timestamps
situation.
beforehand.
Yeah.
E takes f6. It's the same conundrum we were discussing before. The worst moves happen when they think the longest. And White had 55 minutes before, and after taking this pawn, he went down to 48 minutes. So it just shows maybe he overthought, or maybe it's just that he had no plan. So Luke, in this position, I'm going to have you help White out a little bit. Give White a plan.
I like rook b1 and b3. This, I think, is the way you have to go. You have to, I mean,
B3.
yeah, you have to go for this sort of soon. And the fact that Black's queen is lined up with the rook now is not really doing them any favors. So this, I think, already is, I mean, this looks nice. I don't know what else to say. Once you go, once you take here, though, it just feels like you're sort of going off the path. Just one last thing to point out, by the way. A lot of people, I think, would like to take with the knight here, right? So we should address why we're not doing that. If you're not familiar with a lot of these ideas with the pawn structure, this might seem like the completely natural move. But notice that now you leave this glaring weakness on e5 in the same way that White has a weakness on b3. It's a square that now cannot be defended by one of your own pawns. So White is going to be very happy to, again, find a beautiful square to plant their knight on. The other knight, whoops, let's say, yeah, if we take with a knight, this knight will come to e5. Other knight might come to reinforce on f3. White has all their pieces pointing at this e5 square, and we're not even mentioning the fact that this e6 pawn is what we call a backward pawn, the pawn that can't really push forward and is not defended by any pawns that neighbor it. So this is going to be a real problem. Someone is saying knight b3 now.
Knight b3 now. I mean, obviously,
Here?
there was a lot of delay. And maybe he was thinking that the thing that I said before was e takes f6 was good. Knight b3 is something that, or
knight
I'm not
b3
sure
I'm not
about
a fan of.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it either, because go for black. Black's eventually going to want to attack the king side, so leaving the knight there is good to protect the b3 square, but for me not to actually put it there. Oh, he's saying rook b1. So he's saying rook b1,
and now knight b3.
and then knight b3.
Yeah, so still, here, now, okay, if you trade queens, it's going to be similar. There, I think you're going to face the same problems as black. But now, okay, we've filled the b3 square, so that's no longer a weakness for white, and we're not going to be able to use it as black in the future. And furthermore, now, even though, you know, the b3 square is not the pawn break that white is gunning for, they have a new pawn break in c4, which is going to be very painful. Even now, I think is really strong. You're going to open up the c file. You never want to take this as black, because the bishop is going to come and pressure this pawn as well. So so this is going to be pretty dangerous for black, if not just like bad. Because I don't know what else you do if you don't take it. Yeah.
Or
So,
suggesting
knight b3 is
bishop.
definitely bishop a4. Okay, that's very creative. Okay, so he's saying rook b1 takes. That's very creative.
Takes bishop
okay,
a4.
Now you have an argument. Yeah. Okay, I didn't consider that. That's actually very nice. Let's see then. So maybe we just wouldn't take it, right? Let's see. What else can we do? Maybe bishop f1 and just leave the knight and eventually take it. Bishop a4 is a very nice idea. I like that actually. Okay, but let's see. Like, what's the next move then? Like, bishop d6. Maybe bishop d6 is going to make it a little bit more difficult to play bishop a4. So, I mean, maybe knight e7, something like this. But I think it's better to okay, bishop a4 is a very nice idea. But I think, just practically speaking, it might be better to leave the option to play knight b3 at a moment when, you know, this knight doesn't have the option to trade. But that's definitely an idea. That actually might be the best line, now that I'm looking at it. But in any case, I guess we'll go back to the main variation. Yeah, bishop a4.
And before we keep moving on, the questions keep coming in. We have a question now from a good friend and coach Yakov. I'm not sure what position this is referring to. Maybe after, maybe after e takes f6. He says, but knight takes f6 is only bad because black castle queenside. If he hasn't castled yet, or was castle kingside, you would have to live with an e5 weakness, right? So
yeah.
Referring to...
Yeah, but the difference though is that then your rook would be on the f file. So you'd have the e5 weakness, but you'd also compensate for it with the fact that, you know, imagine your king is here and your rook is here, right? Your rook would be on the f file that is then opened up, and oftentimes you'll see a rook takes f3 sacrifice to shatter the pawn structure in front of White's king and sort of get some play that way. So there's definitely, you know, the disadvantage of the weakness on e5 if you're already castled there, but at least then you're getting something for it. Here you'd get nothing for it if you were to take on f6 with the knight. If
Let's go back to the bishop a4 for Gotug. Bishop a4. After they take the knight with the bishop, their bishop will be tied down to stopping the pawn push the entire game, and it'll basically be a pawn.
Fair enough. Yeah, but I mean, the light square bishop is kind of always a pawn in this structure. Definitely that's definitely a fair case though. Yeah, the bishop on b3 maybe looks a little better than it's actually doing. But just to make the case for black is, imagine the bishop is on b3. Your queen is also, as white, going to be sort of stuck to the c2 square, because if you ever let black play bishop c2 and the bishop comes to d3, it's going to be, or even just that diagonal in general of h7 to b1, it's going to be very strong. So I definitely agree the bishop on b3 is not some stellar piece in terms of activity, but okay, I mean, it's the light squared bishop in the French. You know, what do you want?
All right, now let's move on, Luke. I think we exhausted this to death with three different people.
It's good analysis,
Gotug and Yakov,
but an interesting idea.
Now we move. We move. All right, so the game was played.
Okay. Bishop f1.
You can take it.
Okay, bishop d6. So seems normal. And g3. So I guess this is White's big idea, but again, you're sort of playing, I think, on the wrong side of the board, because okay, our main break is going to be b3, right? Pawns at b3, like we were saying before, and we could go on another tangent about this bishop a4 idea in all these lines. But after you play g3, now, and we've seen this, Alan, in your games, you create a hook, right? So black's rook is perfectly situated to throw in h4, h5. And guess what? It's going to make contact or something. If you put that pawn back on g2, if black's pawn is landing on h4, it's not going to actually open anything up, right? And if you ever play h3, well, white's not going to take you, even if it wins a pawn. They're just going to shut everything down with g3, right? So now that g3 is already played for white, black is going to have a lot of an easier time opening up that side of the board. So yeah, so rook e8. I guess that's a normal looking move. I would think that you want to develop this knight first, because this is just a, you know, I'm not really calculating here. I'm just looking at the position. It seems like this rook is gonna want to be a little bit more flexible. Maybe it will come to e8, but it'll also maybe come to g8 and line up this type of attack. So okay, rook e8, it's not like a bad move or anything, but okay, maybe I'm being too harsh. It's I just think e5 is not really the move that's gonna that's not really the plan in this position.
I'm with you. Look, I'm
It's
with you
always
completely.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, because again, you're sort of creating weaknesses if you open up the center. It's gonna make this sort of construction a little bit more flimsy, and it's very important that this chain is very stable because your king is right behind it. So okay, rook e8, reasonable move, but okay, if the idea is e5, maybe it's in the wrong direction. But also, it seems like a normal move as well. So bishop g2, now knight e7, and bishop h3. So a little
And that's
stutter
the next
step.
critical moment. That's the
Yeah.
next critical moment. So if we look at the
Mhm.
timestamps, bishop g2, bishop h3. By the time
Mhm.
bishop h3 was played, white went from 42 minutes to 37 minutes. So maybe it's not the
Yeah.
idea of not really knowing how to proceed.
Yeah. So bishop h3 is an interesting idea, just to pressure the pawn. These pawns like this, when they're side by side, this is not the typical situation, but it resembles a sort of hanging pawn structure where you're faced with this dilemma where, okay, you have these two pawns. When they're standing side by side, they're great because they control a lot of squares, right? This pawn's controlling dark squares, the other one's controlling light squares. Problem is, if you ever push one of them, the opposite color is going to be extremely weak. Like if you ever go f5, e5 is then a huge outpost. If you ever go e5, then the light squares are going to open up, right? Especially d5 is going to be weak. So these pawns are a little bit soft, but I think black has enough pieces sort of pointed towards them for it to be not a huge problem. So bishop h3 is, I guess, trying to, coax an f5 move out of black, which, by the way, I don't think is even that big of a deal, because you might even use this pawn for an eventual f4, which could make some sense. But I guess I see the idea, because it's not like the bishop on g2 is some great piece, right? I mean, in some distant future, if you can ever play b3 and line it up like this, then okay, we're talking a different story. But let's not forget that black gets to move every time white does, and they're probably not just going to allow the position to open up in any way white is choosing. So okay, I guess I get the idea, but as you were saying, with the time management, often if you're thinking too long and you're not really sure what to do, these types of sort of hallucinations can cloud your mind, where you're like, oh, I have to move, and like, okay, if we're taking these two moves in tandem, what are the odds that this is the best sequence? Probably slim. I mean, maybe white was thinking they made a mistake with bishop g2, but it seems a little bit like, incongruous, if you want to put it that way. The plan isn't really driving together. But okay, knight g6 makes some sense, right? Adding another defender to the e6 pawn, rook e3, maybe preparing to double. Okay.
Yeah, not a bad
And rook
idea, but
g8.
again,
So
rook e3, 37 minutes to 31 minutes with this rook e3 move.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's reasonable. I guess
it's not a bad move.
Yeah, at least the plan is sticking together, right? There's a clear idea here. But just to go back, after bishop h3, one thing I think we forgot to mention is now you're lined up, right? So maybe an h5 move right now, right? And the fact that this bishop is already here is gonna cause some potential problems. Like, just for example, okay, maybe am I hanging the pawn? I thought there were tactics. Okay, maybe I'm just hanging the pawn. Wait a second. Wait. Okay, so there's something like, imagine, just for the sake of argument, right? Maybe this just doesn't work, but this is just sticking with the theme. Something like this, right? And imagine, just to show the variation, there are variations like this, right? This type of thing exists. Just so we're aware, and this attack is going to be probably fatal towards this king, right? Now, that's not all forced. White doesn't have to go for all that, but the fact that we're getting h4 in so quickly, I think might even be worth sacking a pawn for, because I mean, look at White's development, right? Now, again, maybe this just doesn't work, but you know what? Let's turn on the engine. Does this work? It doesn't. Okay, but the idea is okay. I guess just rook takes f6. Wow. Oh, and f takes. Okay, maybe it just loses. All right, the computer is gonna be harsh to me, but okay, maybe. My point is that putting the rook on g8 is a little bit. I really like the rook on h8. The fact that it's lined up with the bishop seems very promising. But okay. Okay, fair enough. So king h1 now, stepping out of the way. Bishop f8. Reasonable. I mean, I guess he's trying to open up the defense of his queen, seems like the idea. Maybe trying to kick the rook away. Queen e1. Okay. Bishop f5 is sort of a cute move, but also there's not really a threat, right? That knight is defended. So bishop h6, and they take, which is interesting. And by interesting, I don't know if that's a good interesting or a bad interesting. That bishop seemed very important as a defender for this king. Now the light squares are going to be very weak. So look at all the light squares, right? Very, very weak. I mean, you have all your pawns on dark squares, and we just spent 1, 2, 3, 4 moves to trade off our light square bishops with unforced. So again, I think it's often, well, of course, calculation always comes first, right? These sort of concrete considerations, but it's also worth just keeping in the back of your mind, like, what are the odds, just from a statistical standpoint, that this is like the best plan? Probably not, right? And if we want to be more positionally focused, again, giving up the light squared bishop like this, even if it wasn't taking so many tempi, seems a little bit, let's say, counterintuitive, to say the least. But okay, we take rook e2 and bishop a4. So grabbing some light squares, as the commenter before was saying. So bishop a4, I'm not 100% sure what's going on there, because actually now this knight h4 idea is looking a little bit strong, because after we go back, I mean, I thought the idea was this. Maybe I might be mistaken, but I'm not sure what the problem is here with the discovery on the bishop. I mean, maybe White saw a ghost, but this looks very good. I mean, let's say, how are we going to take knight? I mean, both look about, sort of the same. Let's say we take with the knight. Take, and okay, we're not really going to be able to take here. This looks pretty good for me. I don't know about you, Alan.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so okay, maybe is there some tactic we're both missing here? I hesitate to check with the computer again, but okay.
Not really.
Okay, so apparently it's saying there's some sort of compensation. What does it want here? I don't.
It says e5.
E5, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess.
Queen of.
Okay, this
bishop
seems.
E3.
What? Bishop E3?
Bishop E3, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not really sure where the compensation is here. I mean, I guess Black has some active pieces, but I feel like practically this is a good change of events for White. So maybe they calculated all that and didn't like it. But again, knight h4 and knight f3. It seems like the idea of knight h4 is to throw in this this trick. But okay, we go back. Bishop g7. Probably, I'm sure if Lev was here, he would have mentioned this trick, right? Now the knight goes back. Now knight b3, at a moment when the knight cannot be captured. And I actually really like this decision. We've been talking about how bad this bishop is all day, right? Or okay, at least for the past couple minutes. but he takes it. And I actually really like this decision because even though that's the bad bishop, it was playing a really important role in holding this entire construction together, but also controlling this diagonal. And now after Black's bishop is taking over this long diagonal, like we were learning in the from the examples Grandmaster Stripunsky was showing, 2 bishops, right? White has no bishops, which oftentimes is an even worse case of events than just having one, especially in a position like this where White's knights are, nowhere to be found in terms of activity, and Black is going to gain a lot of activity on these diagonals. So I actually really like this decision, giving up a knight for a seemingly bad bishop just to transform the position into one with 2 bishops, right? It's sort of a transferring of one type of advantage to another. So, okay, bishop h6, rook b1, queen c6. So maybe there are some tricks, takes, and like this, right? So knight goes to e3. And, okay, again, sort of hanging pawn style of structure. If we ever go e5 with the knight on e3, the light squares become very weak, right? So there are some concrete considerations with pushing these pawns. But okay, the queen goes back. Knight g2. Okay, interesting maneuvering. And notice, I mean, these knights really are lacking squares, which I think is sort of the key of this game. And queen h7, another very interesting move. You see this maneuver a lot in various French defenses. A lot of times in the Rubinstein, you'll get a position where, not the winnower, the winnower variation of the French, which is instead of the advanced variation with the immediate e5, it goes knight c3 and bishop b4. You get this weird position with doubled pawns, very complex positions. But the point is, often you'll see this plan where Black will have a pawn on h6, basically their pawns are like this, right? And they go like queen e8, queen h7, queen g8, and queen h7. This is a very common idea in the French, to put this queen on this really nice long diagonal. So this, I think, is a very nice idea, taking over 2 diagonals, right? One light squared, one dark squared. Black is taking over a lot of squares with these pieces here. And also, okay, just you mark down the time here, 7 minutes on rook a1. So okay, now I guess
the 7 minutes was on queen h7 for Black.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, that's a great move, though. I think I really like the idea, queen h7.
Yeah.
Just so we all are on the same page here, this is not hanging. We'll take it, and take the rook, right? So rook a1 is now lining this up, right? Because the rook is no longer hanging. So bishop d7.
And here, White's in deep trouble. Maybe not from a positional point, even though that's pretty much in trouble based on what we said about knights having not many squares, better piece activity. But the time is a disaster. At this point, with bishop d7, Black has 20 minutes left in the clock. White only has 8. So with the amount of moves being limited, they have 8 minutes to try to come up with something to salvage this game.
So, okay, knight d2. Again, okay, here, instead of going rook a1, I get the idea, right? You want to threaten to capture the pawn, but okay, we've talked before about these one-move threats. In a way, rook a1 is a one-move threat, right? It's sort of creating the tactical situation to threaten this pawn. I mean, I think that's the only idea. I don't know if maybe White had another idea in mind, but as far as I can tell, that's the concept. But you're making one threat, but Black is going to very easily parry that, and now your rook is just on a worse square. So I think instead of rook b1, maybe a move like knight d2, right? And now maybe we want to go b3. Now, okay, they're going to be potentially tactical. Like right now, maybe it's not an immediate threat because you can throw in an in-between move, but this type of plan I feel like is the way to go. I feel like Black really needs to do something on the the queen side, but the king's over there, right? They need to do something on that side of the board a lot of times when you have the knights, the onus is on you to do something, because the side with the bishops, they're very happy to go into the endgame. The more pawns that get traded off, the more diagonals open up, the more, the position is opening up. The bishops are going to be very, very happy. So bishops tend to improve in these sort of situations just as a matter of course. So if white just sits back and lets black sort of do their thing, they're just going to slowly succumb to the power of the bishops. So again, rook a1 I think is just way too slow. So black may have, Yakov says black's idea may have been to reroute the bishop to c2 to e4. I like that idea. Yeah. So you're saying knight d2. This is actually, I think, a very nice idea. Yeah, maybe bishop d3 is going to be a little bit of an annoying. Actually, the rook is getting trapped. Okay, maybe knight d2 is just a blunder. Okay, yeah, the rook actually is getting trapped. Okay, I take it back. I'm getting called out by the commenters today. Yeah. So okay, as a concept though, right? I think b3 has to be the move to consider. Yeah, and actually, if you can't go knight d2, you have like no squares. Look at the bishops, right? The bishops are covering all these squares. Your heavy pieces are trapped, right? Maybe you have to be maybe as black, as white, you have to be even more drastic and do something like, I don't know, like a queen f1 doesn't even work. You get the same trick, right? Like this. Okay, maybe you have to go like queen g1. I just want to double my rooks or something. That must be wrong, but yeah, the rooks seem to be really just, dominated by the bishops here. It's a real problem. But okay, rook a1. Okay, maybe rook a1 is the best. Maybe that's what he was thinking. Maybe he wants to trade queens, right? Or do the same idea, queen b1 and queen a2 and b3 or something. But yeah, it's actually very very difficult to find a move here for white. But okay, rook a1, bishop comes back to d7, over protecting e6, or I guess just protecting it. Now knight d2, rook e7, maybe going this way, maybe going this way, staying flexible with the rooks. Okay, knight comes back to f3, so white is sort of just shuffling, which I guess makes some sense considering the stuff we just looked at. Rook g to e8, king g2, bishop a4. So king g2 is sort of an interesting move. Maybe now is the time. Maybe you can go b3 right away. Takes and like, I almost want to like sack everything. Okay, this maybe is a little too much, but like these are the types of ideas to consider here. Like, or maybe like a4 here, and like then b3, sack the pawn, and that way you're not gonna lose it right back. Or like the reason b3 now is maybe an issue is because you can't win it back right away, right? Like imagine take and bishop a4. Now maybe you can even do this, but something about it seems a little bit wrong. Yeah, so maybe you start with a4 with the idea of b3 and like rook b2 or something. A4 seems like it must be the move. I don't know what else you do. You need some space, some breathing room for your rooks. But yeah, king g2. I mean, I guess it's a move. Bishop a4, and whoops. Okay,
Whoops.
A little bit of an anticlimactic end to the game. Queen d2. A trade of a bishop for a queen is favoring black in this position. Advantage to black.
Advantage to black.
Yeah. So yeah, bishop takes d2.
And that's it. At this point, white resigned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunate ending.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but just the pressure. I mean, I really like how Lev played this game. You got the two bishops, and what a perfect game to complement Alex Stripunsky's demonstration of the power of the bishop pair in those last couple of examples. So great games all around. Alan, any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? Not really. The beginning of the game was especially interesting, looking at the structural parts in the opening, queenside castling, and then just like we saw in the game, I think it was last week, or not last week, the game with Oleg, how black was playing on the proper side, white not so much, and eventually white just completely ran out of moves.
Yeah. So great games all around, and I think we'll leave it at that. So thank you everybody
All right.
for sticking with us.
Next week, for the Thanksgiving episode, we're going to do something a little bit special, as today was the New Jersey K-12 State Championship. So next week, we're going to try to have 3 guests on, hopefully each from different grades, which means we're going to have a special, long, hour-and-a-half episode. I'm thinking we'll start at 7 or 7:30. I'm not sure. I'll announce it to everyone. We're going to have a special, action-packed episode next week. Luke, I hope to see you for there.
I will be, yeah. So I guess that's all for today.
That's all for today.
So thank you, Alan.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
We'll
Luke.
see you in the next one. Bye-bye.